A very warm welcome this afternoon to the AOEC. My name is Karen Smart. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to host this webinar for HR Week. And we've got three really engaging and interesting coaching supporters to be with us. I'm just going to allow a little time for everyone to arrive so that we can start promptly at 12:30, and we're going to get together and we're going to finish at 1:15. So we're together for 45 minutes. And on behalf of the AOEC, I'm really delighted to welcome you all this afternoon. So the guests that I'm going to be introducing you to are Sian Ferguson from SHL, and also Paul Williamson from Ambassador Theatre Group, and Kate Simpson from Staffing 360 Solutions. I must say that in the background, we are ably assisted by Georgia Blatherwick. Anyone who has any technical difficulties, please pop a note in the chat to Georgia and she'll do her best to help you. And if you have any questions that arise during the time that you're with us, please put them in Q&A, and Georgia's going to try and keep us alert to what's going on in the Q&A. We're recording the session, so we'll be circulating the session once we've finished it. So a very, very warm welcome. And I can see some notes coming in. We've got someone from Kenya. Hi, great to have you here. And so let's turn immediately to introductions. Sian, welcome to you. Thank you for being with us. Please give us a little sense of who you are.
Delighted to be with you, and hello to everyone in the audience. So I'm an occupational psychologist and an executive coach, and I head a European team of consultants at SHL. And really that's about being ensuring that we're alongside our clients as they transform and grow as businesses. And for those of you who might be less familiar with SHL, you know, we have a really strong psychological provenance, and now we're able to combine that, if you like, with the best that science and technology can offer to support the decisions we make with and for people. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Thank you, Sian. And Paul.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here. My name is Paul Williamson. I'm the Head of Talent Development at the Ambassador Theatre Group, ATG. I've been a coach since 2014, and we've been have got a close association with the AOEC, having worked with them for a number of years now. And we're working hard to create a coaching culture within our organisation. So we're a big network of theatres. We're also a producer, and we run a big ticketing operation as well worldwide. So coaching features as a really important part of our business.
Thanks, Paul. And Kate.
Hello, so thanks for having me. I always describe myself as a HR veteran with over 20 years experience across a real range of industries, so retail, both food and fashion, and pharma and financial services, and more recently staffing. And I've worked with Karen in the AOEC now for over 7 years. Karen met me when my firstborn was a baby in a sling, and that was my first connection to the AOEC. And I've done a number of qualifications and courses with the AOEC, and it's been really instrumental, I think, in terms of the cultures and the organisations I've worked in, the impact that we've been able to have as part of the partnership. So it's a real pleasure to be here today.
Thank you all. And I must say, you were all selected to be here today on the basis really of your commitment to coaching as a profession, and really through our experience of partnering with you to help bring about some of those changes you've wanted in the organisations that you serve. And what's marvellous, I think, is that, you know, in this process, we also work together as partners, colleagues, and you're our clients, but more importantly, I personally think of you as friends now, all three of you, and you're certainly friends to the AOEC, and so it's with great appreciation for that. Because I think, you know, some things are more important than just business, and our business is really about human relationships. So I'd be really keen to hear from each of you, really, what it was that drew you into coaching and what you thought it was that complemented your role. Not very coachy double question there, but hey. So let's start with what it was that drew you into coaching, and then we'll take what it meant in your HR role or your learning and development role.
Shall I jump in, Karen?
Go for it.
It's really funny because thinking about this question, I think, knowing what I know now, I think coaching is just essential. It's an essential sort of ingredient. And I think there are two things that brought me into it. One was personal, from a sort of career development perspective, and also having recognized that my patterns were following me. I thought actually it would be great to unravel some of these and see how they're impacting life in the workplace. But second to that, and being in an in-house role at the time, within an organization and in leadership development, there was an investment in coaching in parts of the business that really we probably weren't optimizing the value of. So there was something really important about guiding the business to integrate, as Paul was probably doing, that sort of, a coaching culture within an organization, and then being really clear about the standard you were going to bring in. So for me, as a psychologist, codes of ethics and the duty of care to individuals is really important. So the provenance of where you go for training, I think, is really critical. So being able to bring that then into an organization in a coherent way, so we knew the quality of coaching, and we also then could sustain and supervise that coaching in-house, were sort of critical paths that led me to the AOEC. And I think really it's just that critical enabler now of understanding transitions, and whatever they are, the coaching frame, if you like, everything we're talking about, you have to be aware of it. You have to kind of make sense of it in some way. You have to make some decisions on it, and you have to act in some way, whatever it is. So that whole coaching frame is an essential for life, I would say.
Thank you. That's really interesting, and I love that sense of personal and collective responsibility, but also about delivering value. Let's turn to perhaps you, Paul, and find out a little bit about your answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know what a difference coaching can make, just in terms of the development of a manager or leader, and I know that from personal experience. So I've worked for ATG for 24 years, so that's a very long time to be with one organization, and certainly my background was actually in ticketing and sales. So I started as a box office assistant and then worked my way into management, and I just remember fairly late on in my career being given access to a coaching course almost by chance. It was a 2-day course, introduction to the GROW model. And I just remember it being absolutely transformational in terms of the way that I then began to think about, well, what is this task of being a leader then? I've been doing it for X amount of years, but am I doing it well? And I think prior to that, and this could be a generational thing, but I've seen it in younger generations coming through as well. I remember that feeling of becoming a manager and feeling that I had to have all the answers, that I had to be like a walking encyclopedia. So if someone came up to me and asked me something, I'd be able to trot it out, and that therefore would mean that I was a good manager or leader. And I love the work of John Blakey as well, and he kind of talks about this too, about the fact that the old way of working was all about having a bigger brain. Your body is just transporting this brain around that you could just apply to all these challenges that come your way. But I think that can be really limiting, and it can certainly be limiting on the people that you work with. And so I had this kind of epiphany, I suppose, quite early on. So I knew by the time I moved into HR and I'd done my I was a generalist to begin with, and then I moved into learning and development, and I thought, well, what's going to make the most amount of difference to people? And there was a big emphasis on creating, where were our future leaders, so our emerging leaders, if you like. And I knew then that coaching would make a huge impact, support people, challenge people, enable them to, to really engage with their team, ask great questions, encourage people's best thinking and all of that kind of thing. So that was my kind of journey in, but certainly it started with a personal experience, if you like, and a deep knowing, I suppose, knowing that this is the right way to approach so many challenges within the kind of management and leadership space.
I think you're touching on some of the great paradoxes that crop up within coaching, that as leaders we think we have to have all the answers, and actually being able to be vulnerable in some way inspires others. Not having the answers, provided we can demonstrate our competence in other ways, in the way that we hold ourselves, is perhaps more important than being the bigger brain.
Absolutely. And in the modern world, and particularly now with the pandemic, we're going to need everyone's creativity and best thinking, aren't we? So the idea that you could just dictate or tell and sell your way through into the future, I just don't think that's not the way forward, is it?
Well, let's hope not. If anyone's listening is already surprised, then come and talk to us. Kate, if I might turn to you, what occurs to you as you listen to Sian and Paul?
There's lots of similarities there for me, and I was just trying to think about why I first approached you to really build that relationship in terms of the coaching connection. And I think there was a couple of conscious decisions I made. One was that I knew from a HR career path, some of the best leaders I worked with, had started to move into that organizational development space and were qualified coaches or had really good coaching skills. So that was a purely selfish kind of route that I wanted to take, because I knew that it would really help me be a better HR professional leader. Which then I assumed would make me much better at the job that I was then going in to do. But the most, the bit that I was reflecting on when I was thinking about this question in advance was very much around, often from a HR generalist perspective, coaching is used as a remedial action. Okay, so we are coaching someone because they're not performing at their best or they're doing the wrong thing, which is probably absolutely the flip side of what the essence of coaching is all about. So, for me, coaching really complements and bringing coaching into the organization drives a sense of awareness into an individual that helps them start to understand how they can be at their best. And that's what I love about coaching, which is you assume positive intent, you assume that there's trust, that someone's doing the best they can do. And it's how do you unlock some of that, all of that resource they have that might be stuck for some reason, so that they can become a better person either in your organization or make a choice that they need to go somewhere else because they fit better somewhere else, as opposed to it being very much about, performance driven. And I have to say, I was guilty when I went on my first coaching practitioner program, and Paul, like you, Grow was really transformational for me because I'd used that in lots of my retail roles. And it's only until recently when I'm finishing my advanced program with the AOEC, where actually holding a state of not having to move towards a goal with someone is even more powerful than moving them through something like a Grow model. So I for me, coaching is just a huge compliment from a HR perspective, because you're there to service and you're there to enable people, and coaching awareness makes me more enabled to do that, and it hopefully gives something to the individuals that I'm working with.
It just occurs to me that there might be people listening who don't know Grow, who are new to coaching. So, would you just like to fill out the acronym for us, just in case? I'm sure people do, but just in case.
So I remember it quickly because I've purposely tried to move away from it. It's what's the goal? And Paul, you can jump in and remind me if I'm getting it wrong. So what's the goal that someone's trying to achieve? What's their current reality? So where are they in their current state of play? What's working, what isn't working, what might be getting in their way? What's the opportunity that's being presented for them? So where do they want to move towards? you know, what would good look like? And I think the W is when. Is that right, Paul? Have I got W wrong? You have to remind me. W is,
I'd say way forward. So that's when you kind of agree the action.
when are you going to deliver it? Way forward. So yeah, so goal, reality, opportunity, and way forward, or as I call it, when.
When. Well, I think that businesses like that approach because of the goal focus. But I think you're right, Kate, that working at depth does involve a relinquishing or a holding lightly of goals. That's something that I'm still working on.
Absolutely, but if you're introducing coaching into the business, and you can get line managers and first line managers to start adopting the GROW principle, you're making such an impact in the first place, because they're not telling someone what to do, they're helping someone go on an exploratory journey. And I think that's progress in itself, so it, as Paul said, it's much better than someone being told what to do and not having to use or engage their brain. They're much more engaged in it.
And I think that opens up the point that actually there's a whole world to coaching, isn't there? I started off with this narrow view of what it was, that it was the GROW model and that was it. And then, doing the practitioner diploma and learning all these other models, and then creating your own personal model that makes sense to you and is congruent with the business you work in. It's a very emergent approach, which is in keeping with coaching, but it allows you to make the absolute the best choices in terms of yourself, self-awareness, so you become the best coach that you can be, and then you can apply those skills in whatever environment you're working in.
It's interesting listening to you guys talk about the diploma and then Kate, your time on the advanced program, because I certainly had that realization that there's a point at which you kind of shift from doing coaching to actually being a coach, and when it happens, it is the sort of, you talked about moments of epiphany, but it is a shift, the sort of being on the outside to being on the inside of what you're doing, and I think then you almost really realize the power it has in so many circumstances in life, and that the gift of this sort of sense-making method, in a way, whatever that is, just seems to me to be such a valuable space and gift to give people.
Thanks, Sean. I'm wondering whether the three of you might be able to share examples, obviously without breaching any confidentiality, but whether you can share any examples of the impact that coaching has had on your organisations or at the organisational level, because I think that might be interesting for people.
If I think about that this year, say, Karen, if I think about some of the clients I've worked with in organisations, and then I think about the broader impact of colleague coaches in organisations, I think probably it feels like the biggest impact we've had is, especially this year, is that space to listen for people, because it's felt to me, certainly with leaders, if you're not overloaded by life, we're overloaded by strategy, and now we have to reorganize everything as well, and everything's just got piled in, so we have more to do, don't we? So we probably would need that bigger brain that Paul's talking about, but I suspect if we had a bigger brain, we might only use it in the same way, which probably wouldn't be that helpful. So I think that gift of the space to listen has been more impactful than anything this year for leaders in particular, because I don't think they have had that anywhere else, probably except that time they spend with you as a coach in the room. And I think the value that's provided people, you can almost, you can see it in they embody it really, because for a moment tension might lift, for a moment there might be, actually, in this world that feels like you have no control, that actually you do have some control over your decisions. So I think for me that's been the biggest and actually pretty emotional impact of this year.
Yes. And as I listen to you, because we're all kind of being watched, having conversation, I must admit I feel a little bit of tension, but as I listen to you saying that, I kind of almost relaxed into that space of listening to you, and I think that's it. That sums it up.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think for us, the impact of having a coaching lens through the last year has been probably more geared around helping people understand or reminding them of what they do really well. So what are the strengths that they have, both, you know, as an individual within their team and therefore as part of the organisation, because that's really helped co-create some resilience within the organisation at times when it's felt like people are stuck. So, you know, the opportunity is, as Sian said, to listen, to help people pause, but also to help people see that there is a way forward at times when it's felt like 5 steps forward and, you know, 20 million steps backwards, or people are juggling multiple priorities of homeschooling and trying to work and you know, everything else, and feeling like they're perhaps not doing anything very well, and getting them to realize that actually the fact that they're actually doing all of that means that they're doing a pretty good job anyway. Yeah. And I think the bit now is about helping people move beyond that and to move out of what's being survive to moving towards more of what, you know, future focused, because I'm coaching lots of different people at the moment and they're still quite stuck because it's still an uncertain environment that we're all kind of operating in. You know, the news changes daily and people get a bit unsettled by that, or the world around them gets unsettled and it impacts their business. And it's about having that nerve to be able to stay future focused and move forward whilst being kind to yourself. That's where some of that coaching.
Kate, have you found that it's just making me think about a couple of things from conversations I've had recently with clients, the expectations that they seem to put on themselves, or we put on ourselves, seem sort of, well, superhuman and very unrealistic. So that feels to me like something really important around, you know, resetting expectations or a level of acceptance of some things. And that reminder, as you say, that, you know, you're doing some things very well, you know, some things are really working for you. You have a say in this, you have a stake in this.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, yesterday I was having a conversation with someone about expectations and the expectations they were putting on themselves. And I always use the word be kind to you. Yeah, because, you know, sometimes I think people really put themselves under pressure to do more than perhaps what they're doing without recognizing that they're doing so much already. And that's some of the power of coaching, getting people to reframe their point of view or their perspective. I've definitely seen the benefit of that from a resilience perspective, and being coached myself as part of the program. You know, I'm a human. I'm not nice to myself sometimes. Yeah, so having someone that can, you know, or a group of people that can help me see where I'm being, you know, I know unrealistic in my own expectations, or reframing things in a positive way, means that I can pause and I can come back out of the world with a bit more energy and a bit more positivity than perhaps I had before I had that conversation. And I think that's really important, because the division between work and home, or the opportunity to decompress, has pretty much become either non-existent or tiny. You know, my commute is 5 stairs and I have 3 children. Yeah, so the opportunity to decompress and have a conversation with someone who's really listening, I think that's the power of coaching as well, and having someone that's there advocating and championing just for you in that moment, or that group that you're in, I think is really powerful.
Paul, I can see you're nodding.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you know, the theme of compassion is running through so much of the work at the moment. I think self-compassion and compassion for others has become a real theme, and it's something that that coaching can really help to bring to life, I suppose, in this quite intimate setting of, you know, one-to-one conversations, but equally in group settings too. That's what I found over the pandemic, you know, bringing people together in groups, using a lot of the coaching skills around creating a safe space. So important, not just during a pandemic, I hasten to add. You know, I wonder how much more effective teams would be if you had a conversation about, well, how do we want to work together, and what, you know, what are the things we want to agree before we start work on this project or whatever it is. because it has a profound effect, I think, on the atmosphere and the tendency to become creative. It can impact hugely on all of that, I think. So I've certainly noticed the difference that creating psychologically safe spaces can have for people, and the permission to kind of explore things, to go on a journey. And I think really it's interesting, during this whole pandemic, if you think about the emotional side of it, we're often, torn between past and present. So you're either kind of going over something that's happened and torturing yourself and beating yourself up about it, or you're worrying about, oh, what the hell's going to happen in the future? What if and what if? And then you go back in the past and think, oh, at this stage I'd have been doing this, but we can't now. So there's that sense of grief and loss. But there's this space in the middle, isn't there? This in the moment space, where actually that's when a lot of change can happen. And that's where I find the whole concept of being in the moment, and holding people in the moment and reminding them there are small things that you can do to control the controllables within a certain parameters, can be really empowering. And it gives people a sense of agency when, let's face it, a theme of recent times has been powerlessness, because we don't know what's coming. So yeah, I've found that to be really helpful, and certainly I've seen cases where applied, people have made some real leaps forward. And I've seen it in groups as well, where they start to share things that have worked for them, ask questions of one another, and that's when the culture then becomes a really positive force for good.
I'm noticing there's a question that's come in about goal from Faye, and she says, how do you know what outcome you're trying to achieve if there's no goal? So I wonder if you might have a go at answering Faye's question.
It's funny, actually, I sort of feel a sense of relief in a weird way, because it's funny, because I think there's something about, as coaches, being comfortable with the emergent, and that actually you don't yet know what's going to come up. So of course the person's talking to you in the state they're currently in, of course. And I think if I think about some of the coaching I've done, actually, where there has been a very, let's say, a goal for the coaching program in itself, or aspects of it, invariably that shifts, or it modifies slightly. So whilst I think it's helpful to have a direction and a focus, it's also helpful to keep an openness, and actually I feel a liberation from that in a way, but that might be how I am as a person. And I also think our clients are different in their expectations. So actually some of our clients operate or need, let's say, a more definite structured path to start with for that first engagement, and then it might shift. Others may be happy to just have that total exploring space and see what comes out of it, because there's a direction of change or directional travel going forwards. So I guess it's just been, it brings up your point of paradox, Karen. Actually, there's not an either or to things. There's a both at play somehow.
Yeah. And I take on board everything you say, and I can also feel the objection voice going, but what if you're supposed to show a return on the investment of time and money and effort that's put into the coaching?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a different thing, though. I think that's a different thing, isn't it? Because not having a defined goal doesn't mean that you do work of no value.
Well, that's right.
Be glad to know. Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, Sean. Sorry, I was going to say from a being in businesses, leading HR teams, grow does have a place. It completely, that real clarity around using the grow style performance focused coaching models absolutely have a place where you are working with someone to you know, be really clear about what the goal is that they're trying to achieve. Maybe they want to have a difficult conversation with someone, so the goal is to have a difficult conversation with someone, and you are going to go, well, what's the current reality, what could the opportunity look like, you know, how are you going to move forward? You know, there is an absolute place for grow. I think what, you know, we were talking about when we were saying about, you know, not always having a goal is the not starting that coaching conversation with the drive to achieve clarity around a goal, as you said, Sian, it being very, very much more emergent and seeing where the conversation goes, because we know in coaching typically that style, if we're talking about awareness and personal development stuff, sometimes, you know, what people think is the original goal or the original issue is often something else. It goes in a different space. So the fluidity in terms of being able to have that type of conversation is really positive, because you're unlocking blind spots, maybe, you know. I think, you know, if you think about, you know, the journey I've gone on with my advanced program, I hate disclosing personal vulnerability at times, you know, so I might start off with a really nice surface level topic, and then a really good coach will be able to move me towards more of what the actual real issue and therefore what the goal is that I need to focus on. It's very different if I was talking about time management or performance management or having a difficult conversation. Then the grow model has a really good place in an organization.
I think it's interesting because you know, having learnt the grow model to begin with, it's a great introduction, isn't it? However, I think there are other models that bring, you know, an extra level of depth that can be applied in organizations. So I know, having worked in an organization for many years, that a lot of change doesn't work, for example. And I think that's because often the goal is set too quickly, or there's a lot of assumptions built in, you know, straight away. So, you know, for example, what I learned from an approach like Gestalt is the idea of, well, sitting in the discomfort for a bit. So, and I wonder, I'm curious if organizations spent more time thinking about the what is. So how do we get to this point? Why do we need to change? How do we feel about it, and build up that discomfort? We would come up with much better solutions further down the line, rather than jumping straight to that bright, shiny solution straight away, because that's much more positive and comfortable. However, we sometimes miss a lot of the really important stuff that gets in the way, the barriers, the blocks, the blockers, all of that kind of stuff, which I think, having lived in an organization a long time, those are the kind of things that we sometimes don't, you know, we want to avert our eyes and just, well, let's just crack on. So that's an area where actually coaching can add real value. So you can do a proper analysis. Yeah, you can have open, honest conversations to really dig into the depth of an issue, to be able to come up with some solutions, and it will emerge through a number of sessions or group conversations.
And Karen, one of the things that's jumping to my mind when I'm listening to everybody is a conversation you and I had probably about 7 years ago, when we started to talk about how we coach into one of the organisations I was working in. And actually, what I'm loving about today's conversation is all four of us have very different you know, coaching styles and experiences, which adds strength to an organisation. And, you know, we work together to be able to train the senior exec team, and then, you know, senior leadership members to go through the coaching program, because we knew that each person was an individual, and each person looked at coaching in their, you know, developed their own coaching model, and therefore brought a different strength to the coaching proposition within the organisation. And all of that brought significant value, because everybody had a different way of approaching it. So everybody was just going to benefit from all of these amazing coaching skills within the organisation, and they still do.
And I think in some way what you're all saying is it's about really owning the right to just show up as who we really are, rather than who we think we're supposed to be, or who we think the organisation might want us to be. And when you look at engagement levels within organisations, and plenty of statistics out there that show shocking levels of disengagement among employees, then this is an approach that, you know, apart from anything else, being with a coach makes me feel deeply heard, deeply attended to. And if you think of the level of multitasking that we all try to accomplish, you know, we're all guilty of that. And that's not really how, as people, we want to be treated, or how anyone else wants to be treated. So it's, I guess, a deep respect for one another. So I'm hoping that we've answered your question now, Faye. And we've got just under 10 minutes. So if anyone else has questions, please pop them in the Q&A. One question that I wanted to ask you, I wanted to give the three of you a scenario and say, look, imagine that you're an HRD in an organisation that doesn't really have a lot of support for coaching. What would your starting point be? So a bit of a hypothetical question to throw at you to just play with a bit. You're personally interested in coaching, you haven't been on the journey yourself, and neither has your organisation. Where would you start? What would you do?
So that was that's the description of probably you and I 7 years ago. So I joined an organisation that had no HR function, and, you know, wanting to have a really good, strong brand proposition within the UK to be able to compete, was on a massive growth trajectory. I knew I had a bit of an interest in coaching, and I was knocking on an open door, you know, from that perspective. So where I started was I reached out to a number of different associations, of which the AOEC was one of them, to try and really understand, you know, how could we partner? What would be the benefits in building a partnership? Were they the right organisation to partner with? And how would this fit into my overall organisational development strategy? And I didn't want a 1 year, you know, injection of coaching skills, because I knew that wouldn't have the sustainable impact that I wanted to have over the, you know, the 3 to 5 year plan. So I wanted someone that could be a real thinking partner with me, and be really agile and flexible. So for me, the advice I would give anyone that's looking for that is reach out and educate yourself in terms of, you know, who's out there, who might fit with your personality and your style of yourself and the organisation. Try some things, because, you know, I tried a few things to make sure it worked. And then the best way in which I was able to get coaching into the organisation was, you know, I called it a guinea pig approach. Let's try this is a guinea pig development opportunity and see how it goes, right? They renamed it Pioneers. Let's be pioneers. And I was like, that's fine, whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely fine, but let's start to get a few other members of the leadership team going through some form of coaching training, so they could get their own awareness and understanding of coaching. And I have to be honest, from there it took its own path. And I think we had 5 leadership cohorts, so, you know, over 5 years, each year we'd put 12 people through. We had 12 people go through on a leadership development program. We had all of our senior exec team do the practitioner program with the AOEC, and we had, about 60 people do the 2-day certification process as well, across 2 years. That was 2 years, that piece. So we really leaned on the AOEC as a thinking partner to make sure that we were able to embed those coaching skills, and then we built them into the different propositions we were offering. So we started to have co-coaching within the organisation, which was, you know, the way in which I'd envisioned it, but definitely would not have happened had I not had an open door from the leadership team, and I had not had a credible partner to work with. You know, and there were a few hiccups in the road, but the AOEC dealt with them really, really well, which meant that partnership remained really credible. And that's not me promoting the AOEC, it was just a very genuine reality and situation. I was very fortunate to meet Karen and to be able to, you know, have that experience and journey.
Oh no, forget it. We were in a rather unglamorous location in Clapham Junction. And I said I'd meet you in Cafe Nero, not realising there were 2 of them. And
I think Autumn was about, I don't know, 10 Sold in a
She was
sling.
very tiny. She was very tiny. So Paul, can we hear from you, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, my advice would be to actually, you need to experience it for yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Of being coached and having a go at coaching if you've not done it before. And I think there's lots of opportunities to do that. And certainly the way I saw it connect with our organisation was through the AOEC again. And Karen, I remember you came along and ran some taster sessions for people who were interested in doing the certificate program. And that was a really good way, just short bursts, getting people this idea, well, people who thought they knew what coaching was to kind of experience it in a very brief way. And we were able to do it in a theatre, so it was quite theatrical as well. At the Trafalgar Studios at that time, I think it was. We
yes, it was my West End debut, wasn't
yes,
it?
It was. So it got people, you know, it whetted their appetite. They started to think, oh, this is interesting. And just having 5 minutes to be listened to, the power of that actually, as just a very quick coaching exercise. Incredible to think how much you learn about somebody in 5 minutes. And we all say we haven't got time. Incredible. So, you know, that was the start. And I think we then integrated it into an emerging leaders program. There was a big emphasis on kind of presentation skills, which was quite interesting because I think that was about trying to get people to explore, you know, being an authentic leader and speaking authentically and being themselves, I suppose, even though they were standing up in front of people. So coaching through a specific area like that was really interesting. And we saw people's development really accelerate. And then right at the end of the 2-year program, we did a big presentation event and we invited all the senior leaders and our CEO was there. And it was really interesting because then that created this kind of, well, the proof's there. You've got these incredible leaders standing up and talking about, you know, what their core values are, how they're going to lead, the difference coaching has made to them, what they've learned on their journey. And, you know, it's still my favorite day of the year because we still do them every year. And just to watch them and the effect, the ripple effect that had, actually then more senior people were coming up to me and saying, this is really great. We need something like this. You know, can we do this? I want to program. So then we've developed further programs that have got really ambitious, involving lots of wonderful guest speakers and people from the coaching world to really engage with our senior leaders. And so it did emerge over time, and it became something that was popular and people wanted and they were asking us for then, which was really interesting.
Thanks, Paul. I'm noticing the time and we've just got 4 minutes left. There's a comment from Lorna who says Marshall Goldsmith talks a lot about being kind to oneself and starts every coaching session with the ground rule of please do not be too hard on yourself, which I think is lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Lorna. And there's a question from Avashi, and she says, I wonder if you can share a personal story of where in your coaching career you have made the biggest impact that has stuck with you, either for a person or an organisation. And then she's asked me to answer that, but happy for all to share our experience. So I'm going to start with the three of you. And then if there's time, we'll come back to me.
It's a hard question.
It's a hard question. I know how much you like personal disclosure, Kate.
But it's about another person, isn't it?
Well, it could be about a person or an organisation. Well, I think you probably shared the organisational experience. Yeah. Perhaps we'll come back to you. How about you, Sian?
Gosh, I'm just thinking about it as well. In terms of, it feels like every relationship is significant. You know, so maybe that's why I'm finding it difficult to draw out particular ones. And I'm also struggling with the not having a need as a coach in this. So you know, the only ask of the coach is you have a committed client, and then seeing the client's transformation, of course, is the key thing. So I think about a very recent one. It was a very typical. It actually typifies the what the way to the goal was not the way in which one thought it might be. And so the value that came from that, and actually the realization of that individual, of the strengths within themselves, I think you just feel a sense of privilege that you've spent time with a person on that journey, on that work together. And for me, I'm finding it difficult to answer the question because, as I say, I think everyone's journey is different, you know, and all change is behavioural. So wherever you're joining somebody on, you hope that you've made a significant impact in that period of time, I guess. And I don't think I've really answered the question very clearly, but that would be my sense of why I'm probably struggling with it.
I think we've probably got 30 seconds to hear from you, Paul.
That's easy. No. I mean, there are lots and lots of examples, I think, and personal ones that, you know, in terms of confidentiality, I can't really share within this
That's
space.
The
but,
issue, isn't it?
Yeah, but what I would say is that I have seen transformational change in people. I've seen certainly around confidence is a big theme. So I could talk about big themes. I would say certainly with our Emerging Leaders program, the evidence as well is plain for all to see. And I've certainly experienced people also noticing just within the workplace, a particular person, for example, that I remember one of the first people I coached, other people noticed their increase in confidence and they wanted to know what it was that had changed. So yeah, I think, yeah, there's lots of examples you could give.
Ashley, book a coffee with me and I'll share you my example with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to draw us to a close because we're right on time. It's been such a privilege to share your experiences, to hear your experiences, and on behalf of all of us at the AEC, I can't thank the three of you enough for taking some time out of your day to continue the evangelistic journey of coaching, really. And I suppose one word that I would use to sum it up is, you know, I'm going to say love. I mean, that sounds a bit dramatic, but actually it's really, it's not love like we use that, but you know, that Greek agape love of each other. It's finding that space for each other and respecting one another, and what could be better than that? So I really thank you all for attending. I'm now noticing that there's some more questions that have come up, but we will come back to you and answer any questions. We'll follow up with you. And thanks everyone for being with us today. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.